He kōna ipurangi tēnei nā te reo irirangi o Aotearoa.
Tēnā koutou irirangi te motu I te pūtia tautoko kārawe. Kia ora, my name is Moana Maniapoto. In this podcast series, The Negotiators, we meet the gutsy characters who steered their tribes through a minefield of complex treaty settlement negotiations. These are their stories. In this episode of The Negotiators, we meet Mavis Mullins, who started out as a wool classer from Dannevirke. A founding member of Te Huarahi Tika Trust, which set up 2 degrees, Mavis was inducted into the 2017 Business Hall of Fame. The hotshot businesswoman is clear that negotiating for her iwi was the hardest thing she ever did.
The findings of the tribunal were deep and wide, but really, in essence, it was about the speed of the land loss. It was the speed of the loss of identity. At the actual deed of settlement, when Minister Finlayson read that out, you could hear a pin drop. It was just silence.
We're Māori, and we won't get justice till we've got a Māori flag.
Today, we are strong enough and honest enough to learn the lessons of the last 150 years.
You have not honoured the treaty.
And to admit that the treaty has been imperfectly observed.
The Crown agents, it appeared, were motivated to acquire land for the settlers. There was strategic resistance, but I also know that a lot of these land hearings were all heard on the same day in Wellington and Palmerston and Waipukaro. You start to really understand the actions of the Crown in terms of trying to keep our people confused and divided. The Wairarapa lost land extraordinarily quickly.
Rangitane iwi leader and researcher Manahi Paiwai, sometimes known as Doc Paiwai, was part of the negotiating team with Mavis.
Rangitane essentially settled the lower North Island along with its predecessors, the Ngaitara people, who are an older descendant group of Whātunga. But in today's world, Rangitane reside in the Manawatu and in the Wairarapa, and we have some relatives in the top of the South Island, in the Waido areas.
The 70-mile bush, or Te Tapiri Nui o Whatonga, was our heartland, our homeland. It provided us with shelter, with protection, with food. It was the medicine cupboard, the supermarket. And it was highly prized in terms of the flora, the fauna that came out of it. We looked to Kahununu for protection, and then we looked to the coastal hapu for kai. We already had Pākehā settlers who we had lease agreements with, who farmed the land. It was not only a transactional relationship, but it was a people relationship where both parties were accommodated, but we were certainly a big part of the economy of the area. So Rangitane, in fact, were people of prosperity. It started in a positive way, but again, kind of deteriorated relatively quickly.
Rangitane suffered in some cases because they gifted a lot of land. They gave land for community development in one shape or another, wanting to sort of get on with the new culture and be friendly and all that sort of stuff. And, but often that was taken advantage of. Our culture says that, once you're finished using whatever it is that's been gifted, then you give it back. But of course, the new culture and the land courts too, the native land courts didn't understand that stuff either.
Treaty Negotiations Minister Chris Finlayson knew of the constant alienation of land through the Native Land Court.
The Crown also failed to survey or protect from alienation a number of reserves that have been promised. It's such a familiar account that repeats itself time and time again.
There were some bad behaviours from some of our tupuna who took the mantle of kaitiakitanga of certain lands that they probably had no right to do so. And so there were dodgy dealings done all the way through.
One way the Crown generated division within iwi was through the Native Lands Act 1865, where they accorded the title of the Kaitoki block to just 10 families.
My father, through the archives of the Māori Land Court, found the original Crown deed, 1867, where they came to Kaitoke and they said, "So who are the owners here?" All of them put their hand up. And the agent said, no, you go away and you come back with 10. There would have been a hui that probably went long into the night where they decided who should have their names on those documents. Their understanding was they would be representative. What they probably didn't understand was that those names meant ownership. So fast forward a number of years and you can probably absolutely understand why there are whānau who feel so disempowered, disenfranchised from a place that belonged to us all. The hurt, I guess, of those families left out of those 10 names started to come through. There was tensions on both sides. It was physical abuse, it was verbal abuse. I remember one time saying to him, coming out of the marae, "You know, Dad, if this is how it's going to be, I'm going to go and find our Irish whakapapa or our Chinese whakapapa. I can't deal with this stuff." And he says, "Well, you go and find those," he said, "but they won't be half as much fun as this." I took the 4 pages and had it digitised, and it is now a drop blind in my home to remind me about those 10 families, but the 80 other families whose names don't sit there. I was brought up at Kaitoke, just out of Dannevirke. Growing up, we were dragged along to the most boring land hui with our nannies and parents. Didn't take much in. Remember the discussions long into the night. We Mormonised, Catholicised, Ratnaised very quickly. And so a lot of that identity stuff was overtaken by, religious beliefs. Our grandparents and my parents saw that actually we had to step into a different world to move ahead. I'd seen iwi politics in its worst light, and I wasn't really interested in going there. I loved the world of business. That was where I wanted to be. My husband and I have been sharing contractors, farmers, trainers, very in touch with how, as Māori, we work together or don't.
Mavis Mullins, Mavis's husband, was her rock throughout the negotiations.
People management is one of her strengths. She's a little dogmatic at times. We have very robust discussions on things, but I've learned to actually appreciate her point of view as well.
Been a director on Landcorp and Massey, so, I brought a lot of that real governance strength to the negotiating team.
Mavis has always had that interest, and it was stemmed from her dad, really.
Minister Chris Finlayson understood the impact on Rangitane was significant.
Virtually landless by the 20th century, compounded with pressures of social deprivation, urbanisation and assimilation, these all had a dramatic impact on Rangitane.
Manahi Paiwai understood the pain that was carried by older generations.
Through my talks with my mother, I knew that there was a lot of mamai that they carried, and I really wanted to understand that. The Waitangi Tribunal findings were comforting in that, some truths were revealed, and that was pretty important. Whether we were able to do too much about all of that is another thing.
Jason Kerehi was negotiating for Hapu to the south, Rangitane or Wairarapa. He knew it was best to join forces with those to the north.
Back in 2001, Rangitane o Wairarapa was scheduled to enter into their judicial conference and into the tribunal process. There was a petition from our Tamaki Nui a Rua whānau to say to Wairarapa, include us in your negotiations so that we can do it together. In doing so, Wairarapa ki Tamaki Nui a Rua became the second biggest land settlement outside of Ngaitahu.
The people of Rangitane said, let's keep this tight. 2 from Wairarapa, 2 from Tamaki Nui, and let's get an independent person so that if we couldn't agree, could bang heads together.
Of particular focus was the shared interest around the Pukaha National Wildlife Centre, a cornerstone of their shared whakapapa.
We spoke about Pukaha and we spoke about this area around here, and both iwi had that in their individual claims. And I remember the first meeting we had, someone said, let's talk about this area of conflict. I immediately said, no, let's not call it that. Let's call it the area of shared interest, because we both have a connection to it and we both, care about it. And so we started to talk about this place as a place that we would, share and work together on. And in doing so, we just did away with a lot of that rariraru from the very, very beginning, because it meant that we could talk to one another.
As a negotiator, I kind of felt that I came with no baggage. I hadn't gone through the mamai that those who had brought it to this point did, so I could look at it quite cleanly. I felt that I had some reasonable relationships within Crown circles that I could bring to bear. And although, yes, there were definitely times when I felt hugely out of my depth, I was comforted by the skills of our other negotiators. Negotiation in this space is actually quite one-sided, that it's process-driven. There is some room to move, but not a lot. You have to be very clear about those areas that you feel you can get leverage from. The expectations of our people is the hardest thing. And for a lot of them, they've come through that Waitangi tribunal process. Yay, we've got a report that says we were right. We're going to get our land back. There's not a lot of Crown asset left in the Wairarapa Tamaki Nui region. So our opportunity to bring those to the front were extraordinarily limited.
In order to accept a direct negotiation with the Crown, you were limited to how many cultural sites and how many commercial sites that you could take. And I think there were 6 of each for us and 6 for Tamaki, and that really made us think long and hard about it.
I guess the way we saw it was this. The end of the process would just be our start. Let's, as a people, build a 100-year plan. Let's lock those wahi tapu in, because there was no way we were going to get them through the treaty process. End of story. These are good people on the other side of the table, but they have a mandate as well. They are working to a script. They already have a formula based on your census numbers, based on your population. But because we were able to bring to the table the big sense of loss and the Crown actions in terms of keeping us as an invisible iwi, with the maps, nothing on the census, nothing on tūhono. So all those Crown tools to recognise population, we're not there. The start of the treaty process almost forced people to pick a whakapapa. Kahununu Rangitane cohabitated happily together. The process almost meant you had to choose one or t'other. Some cousins went this way, some cousins went that way, and some of that got really nasty. For Ngāti Kahununu and Tamaki Nui a Rua, it's almost total overlap. That means we're both claiming the right to the same whenua moana awa. And although there's some relevance in that, my perspective, and it will be argued by my relations, is that, we were there first.
Mana whenuatanga was the customary authority exercised over a particular area by an iwi or hapu. Cross-claims are often a contentious issue in any treaty negotiations, and at times The Crown would use these to pit iwi against iwi. Doc Paiwai understood this well.
Mana whenua prevailed in those days, and we all know what that meant and what that looked like, and we understand those things today. We all have a fairly good knowledge of where Tūhoe is and where Ngāti Porou is, and, those sorts of tribal groupings and where they reside and where they have mana whenua, and we understand that. And so the Crown had a responsibility to protect that.
And for Mavis, this complexity was also recognised.
There was a term, association over time, and it was a way for the Crown to recognise the kahununu footprint in the rangitane space.
Rangitane o Wairarapa negotiator Jason Kerehi understood these challenges.
So for me, the most challenging part of the settlement was when the Crown started to entertain the idea that Ngāti Hāmua could be a part of another iwi, but not by whakapapa. I'm going to stop there. Because I don't get that.
When we first went into this, we naively thought that perhaps we could come together and negotiate with real strength against the Crown. It became evident quite early, probably not.
As the negotiations started, it became clear that we might just be the poor cousin of the whole negotiation.
And then when it became personal between the two iwi, that was a point when I really started to question this whole thing. Then I started to think, I don't know if I'm the right person here. It just became too much, too hard. Tears of real frustration, tears of anxiety that we saw each other as the enemy. That was unbelievable. There was a joint meeting, the two iwi with a local district council, and one of the negotiators from Kahununu stood up and said, the mana of Rangitane has been diminished. You could hear a pin drop. There was silence. Hard to know what to say. A little while later, there was acknowledgement that that probably was a little bit strong. At the end of it, you just can't hold those things. You can't hold them. You had to move on. And I've moved on. Our quantum was 32 million. Anything that sits on the table then is valued and you purchase. And if you want a farm, then that comes off. If you want a section in some little towns, that comes off. And in fact, even some of the cultural assets gets valued. So a mountain peak will carry a value of maybe $2,500, $5,000 comes off your quantum. Part of the settlement was the return of Pukaha Mount Bruce. Rangitane are very aware that the cost to maintain Pukaha is in excess of $1 million a year. We kind of asked ourselves, was that a cost that we were prepared to bear? And this is where the opportunity to work more as a stronger linked partner to DOC became more palatable, I guess.
Much of what was lost simply cannot be returned. However, the people of Rangitane have graciously accepted the redress contained in the settlement, and in doing so, I acknowledge their generosity.
Yeah, I was hoping for the stars and all the rest of it. But that's not to say that they didn't do a sterling job with that sort of work, because it wouldn't have been easy, because, we were a large natural grouping recognised in this inquiry area, but we weren't the only large natural grouping recognised.
I have little regret about the settlement. There were some things I had no control over. None of us did.
It was always a very naive thought to think that we would come out of this as one big happy family. But we tried as hard as we could to do that.
The biggest win for me is to have our tupuna name on his own legislation for our people.
Ensuring our footprint was evident from mountain to river to sea. We were so sort of embedded, if you like, in kahununu. You know, we needed to have the opportunity to rise. Tu mai rā rangitane became the catch cry.
The thing I loved about our negotiation was that it was all about love. It was all about love, and the way we treat one another and the way we talk to one another, the respect we show for one another was just always there.
All I can do is say with my hand on my heart, I have done the best I can. Again, my biggest regret is that we couldn't do this together with Ngāti Kahungunu. It could have been a powerful statement of empowerment, you know, for our rohe. The other was that my father wasn't here to see it, and a lot of other fathers and mothers weren't here to see that come to fruition.
We were given our apology at Makirikiri Marae in Dannevirke, and it was the worst day of the year. And when Minister Finlayson was giving his speech, honestly, everything was rattling. Things were just blown around.
The Crown is deeply sorry for its many breaches of Te Tiriti, the Treaty of Waitangi, and its principles, and for the effect that these breaches have caused to generations of rangitane o Wairarapa and rangitane o Tamaki Nui Arua.
By the time Manahi got up to speak, the sun came out, and it was just a different day. It was just an incredible day. And so what did the apology mean to me? It was given to the right people, if you know what I mean.
Many iwi have settled. There's still mamai everywhere, so that's probably something that'll always be there.
I'm not sure if these settlements are the right vehicle for the Crown to restore its honour. That's going to have to be done in a different way. We held hui in the major centres and invited those key stakeholders from the community. We explained what it was that we were looking to achieve through our settlement, and more importantly, how once we were through it, we wanted to be real partners with them in terms of building the communities. These Pākehā communities, they own these places too, and they talked about the chief. You know, they said the chief gifted these lands for a community, or, you know, they still talk about it in a very benevolent, kindly way. That was something we didn't realise. Our relationship with Rangitane Manawatu, which was relatively strained through the process, is so positive. And my greatest hope is that as Kahungunu get through their dark tunnel into the light, that we too will have kōrero that will be on a totally different level. I will always be there, but it's time for the new leadership to come through. I now want to spend more time watching these mokopuna that I have, and maybe doing some other cool stuff in governance and business. We'll see.
Mavis Mullins was one of 5 negotiators appointed in 2011. Redress was $32.5 million plus interest. In 2016, the Crown apologised for the pressure applied to rangitane to sell land, its failure to protect rangitane tribal structures and the iwi from becoming virtually landless, and its failure to respect the rangatiratanga of rangitane. Thanks for listening to The Negotiators, produced by Tāwera and Black Pearl Productions, made with the support of NZ On Air and RNZ. You can find the podcast on the RNZ website, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeart, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Tēnā koutou irirangi te motu i te pūtia tautoko, ka rawe.